Everybody, thank you for checking out another Sported interview. You know how the process works. We sit with individuals in the industry. A lot of the times they're directors, they're players, they're people just in the business. We ask them about their teams, their process, their structure. Today we're here with Jacob Manchester from Navarro College. Jacob, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me as well.
Yeah. Also, Jacob has become kind of a good friend of mine in the last month or so, making him some good connections, and he has a great program. But today's topic, guys, is recruitment. What we hope today is to really learn about the structure of recruitment, important tips, notes, right? This is something every director is currently dealing with. And if you ask anyone in the space, right, this is kind of like the big issue coming up, right? How do you do recruitment? Where are these students coming from? So, Jacob, we'll get started and ask some questions first. I think this is very important. I would love for you to just intro about you. I think this is very important, right? When I say you, right, like anybody could go to the website, the esports website, hear rumors about what you guys are playing and what you guys are doing. I think it's so important. Like, who are you, right? And what does this program mean to you? And I think that's something people have probably never heard of, right? So talk about you from a personal stance.
I'm Jacob Manchester. I'm 27. I just turned 27. And I think a little bit about me is this is going into my second year here at Navarro. Obviously, I think all of you guys are gamers like myself. I'm a gamer as well. I wanted to break into the esports industry in kind of any way I could seem fit. Obviously, I wanted to be a YouTuber, kind of like a professional gamer. It didn't work out for me, and then I kind of found this avenue of like esport directors. I graduated college in 2019, and I think the biggest aspect um, I think that I can bring to the table is like not only am I a good coach, I'm also a good friend, and I think outside
Yeah.
this I have a great impact for. And I'm not going to talk bad about any other program, but I think I just have a great ability to connect with my students. We're close in age, and a lot of the times, like once their year or 2 years is done, because we're a junior college, we're great friends. Talk day in and day out with past, present, our future students. I know it's supposed to be about me. I am like an immortal Valorant player. Our niche here at the is Valorant. Blinn doesn't know of us yet in their esports space, but that's kind of like our goal is to kind of cater. And I'm trying to think of and that's probably it about myself. I know I kind of went on a tangent,
No, that's what we want to hear. That's
but
what we.
I'm here to hopefully create a name for our college in the Valorant space. So if you are one of those individuals that has a passion for esports, you can send me a message, LinkedIn, Twitter, Discord, whatever, and I would happily have you on my team.
Awesome, right? I'd love to get directly into the subject, right? I'd love to give, a lot of the people watching this interview, as you know, are going to be probably new directors, right? Looking at people like you going, I have to do all this around recruitment. They're probably searching YouTube and different forums. Okay, what are other directors doing, right? So I want to provide that value right away. A great way to start, Jacob, is just to talk about your just general structure around recruitment, right? And being more specific to you to give you a question to answer, right? Is can you describe how NC's approach to attracting students stand out from other institutions, right? So I think everyone knows the general
Yeah.
process. You're reaching out to schools, schools reach out to you. Are you doing anything different outside the norm? And then just talk about your process for a second.
Yeah, and so I think this is my first year of recruitment, having scholarships available, and so it's really just trial and error for me for this year. I don't know how we would differ from other universities, just because I don't know how they kind of cater towards their recruitment. But for me personally, kind of the path that I do is kind of figuring out what kind of team that I want to craft and how can I fill those holes. So, example for like Valorant. We have two students coming back for the fall semester, and how can we fit those holes? So I'm looking for three individuals that I can bring onto this team, and how to improve that team. Like what I'm looking for, if I need an IGL, smokes player, initiator player, kind of cater towards that. Again, I don't want to talk bad, because again, I'm still learning. This is my first year of recruitment, so I'm probably doing a couple things wrong, but I'm just trying to get my name out there, trying to get everyone aware that we do have an esports program here down in Texas. And I think my biggest goal is, again, just getting players aware. I'm gladly happy to talk to any potential student about our esports program. And I think that's, again, the biggest thing is just like giving your time to meet these prospective students, because at the end of the day, my goal is to kind of cater towards a student, finding the correct fit for them. If it's not at our school, how can I help the student find the correct school for them? Is it connecting them with a different director? Is it, again, helping them in game to become a certain rank to meet the rank threshold?
No, that's great. And you talk about this idea of being a first year, right? As if it's a bad thing. I think it's great, right? Especially for the learning experience of those involved, right? We're a lot of the time interviewing a lot of these directors. The people watching it are like, hey, well, they're in this position, right? They're able to do that because of this, right? I think if anything, you'll be able to give, if anything, more value coming from someone. Hey, I'm first year, and a lot of people will be able to relate to these experiences. So I want to dive into this aspect of recruitment as a first year person,
Mhm.
right? I think that's so important so that people who are also in their first year can learn from your mistakes and strengths. I want to dive into that. So you're looking to recruit, right, 3 players, right? I think something for me, I would want to know if I was a first year director just like you is how does technology and social media play a part into this, right? So, how integral is it to you? And like specifically, are you doing anything, right? I think it's weird as, directors are keeping their strategies a secret, but maybe you have something you want to share on how you're using social media and technology.
Yeah, and I think it goes into three aspects. I think first off is just going through. I've done recruiting in the past for kind of like the tier 3 scene for Valorant. So just like LFT post. So basically looking for a team. And so Twitter is a good asset. You can just look around. Kind of they'll say what rank they are, what experience they have, and that's kind of an avenue that you can do for free. Also, you can have a just like interest form. I think it's linked on our Twitter page, just like a general. Again, I think a lot of schools do it. What's your name? What games you play? What rank, etc. And then I think lastly is just again being an esport director, you're stretched very thin. You don't have that much time to go out recruit,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'd say like a program like Stay Plugged In or anything along the lines of helping you with the recruiting process is extremely valuable if your budget, like you can allocate the budget for that, because again, it's taking something that you don't have to invest so much time into and kind of streamline the process, kind of like filter in, because again, they do have a database. And so I think like the biggest I think learning experience for me is always asking for help. Like, what can I do better? Kind of learning from the other traditional sports. Like, hey, how do you get students? How do you talk? Like, is it cold calling, etc. And just kind of just pinpointing just the people and resources that you have throughout your campus to kind of elevate your program.
And this leads to another question. Honestly, I personally have,
Mhm.
right, in terms of, and I think everyone, it's something that needs to be asked and talked about more, which is that connection to the K-12 community, right?
Yeah.
Because in traditional sports, that's where it comes from, right? And it's strong there, right? There's whole pipelines and leagues built just on the purpose of recruiting the person into university, right? There's whole summer teams and things that go on, and that's currently trying to be figured out in the, in that university K-12 ecosystem. I think one thing that needs to happen is that, the K-12 community needs to hear a lot more from these universities in terms of what they want them to do, to not just telling them like recruitment of like, hey, this is the type of student I'm looking for, right? That communication happens all the time. But in terms of recruitment, right? Like think of the local high schools that participate in your area. Are there things, right, that you as a university director, you're like, man, I wish they were doing this, right? I'd love for them to be posting more on, for example, LinkedIn, because I'm on LinkedIn or I'm on Instagram or I'm on Twitter, and that would let me know who these students are, right? Do you have any words, right? Because I know a lot of these people watching it are going to be in the K-12 community for these K-12 schools. What students who might eventually come to your program, right? What would you say to them in terms of building a better pipeline?
I think it goes both ways, as being open as like a director saying, hey, if you're interested or reach out. I think that's the biggest aspect. Again, because I'm only one person. There's so many high
Mhm.
schools kind of close around. And so it's a lot of kind of kids to filter through or students to filter through. So if you do have an interest in esport, just reach out. I think, again, we're esport directors. We're always on our computer. You can find a link to get in contact with them again on any probably social media platform, Discord, etc. And I think if you want to take the first step, like have that initiative as a student to again reach out, start the conversation, and again um, begin the conversation, because there's too many students to kind of like filter through, in my opinion.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. I want to lead into another great question that I think would fit for a first year director like you, which is misconceptions, right? Because I'm sure you're going through them all the time. You had this idea of how these things would work, and just coming from someone living it. Not, hey, I did this 5 years ago and I'm telling it, and someone's like, oh, so what? You're living this right now. So students, directors are more likely to listen to you. Talk about the most common misconceptions when it comes to recruitment, right? And you can take it from like, hey, when I'm dealing with these students on campus, or when I'm dealing with high schools, or just anything, right? What misconceptions do, if you're talking to a director right now?
I think the biggest misconception I think is just like talk truly about your program and what you're trying to create. I think sometimes there's a misconception of like kind of the program that you want to build and being real with yourself, right? And so again, I'm not going to say, hey, we're going to become the best Valorant team
I
next
see.
year. I think it's about pitching what you actually have and building a great foundation up. I think that's kind of like the misconception that I had. It takes time. Yeah, my goal is to kind of create this powerhouse of a Valorant team, but it's going to take time. So I'm pitching my program that we currently have, not the program that we're going to have in 5 years. And so that's kind of like a misconception that I had, is like, I want to get the wheels turning. But again, everything takes time. Just be true to yourself, and then that end goal will actually come.
I love that too, and that's more too is an ethical consideration, right? Because I think not even just in esports, that happens in all traditional sports. I mean, that's kind of the sale, right? You want to
Yeah.
pitch your program as best as possible, and what we're going to do, right? But at the end of the day, you don't want to set up a student for an expectation they don't see, right? And I think not all directors try to do that, right? Their goal is recruiting as many people as possible, right? And I have to stretch it a little bit, right? So I think that's so important to hear from directors, right? Because that's how they follow that advice. I want to jump into just another question that I think is very direct, that I think a director would have, right? Providing value here, which is especially for a first time person, which is metrics. Like when you're recruiting, right? And I'd love to hear this from the terms of what the university finds successful. Because at the end of the day, you're a offset of the university, right? And the whole point of you guys is as a recruitment arm, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, to bring more people into the university, or they would have never thought to do this. How do you prioritize metrics in terms of successful recruitment, right? And maybe it's so simple. And maybe it's, hey, if we got 10 and then 15 and then 20 and 30, that's what my university determines as success. Or is it the type of students, right? Or is it longevity, right? What is successful metrics to you guys?
Yeah, and I think it goes like two ways. I think obviously the metrics for the university is literally just building out a roster, getting those students that wouldn't come here without esports. And so for us, it's getting that roster size around that 15 student mark each year across three different titles. And then again, I think the biggest metric for me personally as a director is making sure, again, I said this previously in the interview, is making sure that student ends up where they're supposed to be. Because again, college is the best 4 years of my life. I want to make sure that everyone I interact with ends up at the correct college or university.
No, that's direct and on point. I love that. I want to talk about your strategies of retaining students, right? I think people don't really talk about that, right? I think you come into, how do you get the student into the door, right? But and maybe that's not an issue, right? I think that's something to really talk about. But once the student is placed within the program, it's not like traditional sports where people are, hey, that guy's great. I can offer you a scholarship to come to this school, right? So then all of a sudden you have to provide a lot. Just talk about that, right? Is it a situation when generally, like, yeah, when we have these students, they generally stay and they're happy, right? Is there an actual process or a plan into retaining students who are already part of your program? And what does that look like from you, other than just being like, hey, we're an open program and or a great program?
I think at the end goal for us, we function just as like a junior college, right? We want to transition these students, get them ready for the 4 year to like colleges or universities. And so if they do go to a 4 year school after us, that is completely great. But I think your question is more catered towards like those students that don't have or get those opportunities.
Yep.
And again, I think it's just being transparent about your program. I'm just pitching what I have and kind of setting their expectations to what I actually can provide. And again, this I'm just going into my first year of recruiting, so my player pool or student pool is just people that are already on campus. And so again, it might be interesting to come back to this interview later on and see if things have changed. How do I retain these students that I'm actually recruiting to come to our school? Because again, it's not a problem that I currently have had, just because I haven't had external students come to my campus yet.
No, that makes clear sense. I want to ask you too as well in the time that we have left about Just another great value point that I noticed, and I'm sure everybody faces, right? And it might be touching a little bit on a previous question, which is that support from the university, right? And I know that that differs from everybody, right? And one thing I get all the time, right, is you have some, hey, I'm not getting that buy-in, right, from my administration, or they're doing they're putting in a little bit, or they're making a lot of false promises, right? And I'd love for you, especially as a first time, I know that's every first time as director is dealing about that, but how do you navigate those relationships with this administration who is not 99% of the time esports fans, right? I guess what
Yeah.
would you say to directors watching this who are trying to get a program going? They've gotten maybe a couple $100 by the administration, was like, here you go. But they know there's something bigger, right? What would you do now that you've been in the position, right? Talk about that. Just any general advice that you would have.
And I want to start this off by saying I'm extremely fortunate. I have an AD as well as Dean who support esports. So again, not really like catered, but
Mm,
what I would say is making like transparency a big point into your program with the AD, because a lot of times again we're talking about
mm,
people that have no idea about what esports are. And so again, talking about like what your program is doing in terms of number, like talking to your AD about it, whoever your boss is. I just say AD because we're under athletics. And so again, being transparent about like, oh, we won this game, being vocal about where you place, because a lot of the times they're just super unaware. Again, it's like esports, like they just kind of look at it and they don't do anything for it. So, but again, talking about all of the accomplishments that your program does, big and small, to whoever your boss is, because again, you want them to understand the value that you bring, and if you don't
mm.
give them that information, then it kind of just sits there.
Awesome. And just to ask a little bit more directly, what exactly does that look like for you? I think if I'm a new director, I'm a little bit shy, right? It's like,
Mhm.
okay, yeah. Do I just go to these people and say, hey, let's meet once a month and I will sit there and do a proposal to you? Do you send them something, right? If what is something tangible that these people watching it can do that maybe you've done before?
I think the biggest thing is just like again, I think a lot of the times for gamers and just being human, like going up to their office, just chit chatting about esports, seeing if the boss's door is
Mhm.
open, and again, just like peeping your head around. And then again, it's if you want to talk about like Twitter or whatever, get connected with your boss on Twitter. And saying like, hey, we won this game against this school, and a lot of the times there will be present of it that way. But I think again, the biggest part of the day is just again going to the door of your boss and talking about what you've done. Again, big and small. Oh, we just won our COD match, like 3-1 or something like that. I think really goes a long way. Just because again, at the end of the day, I think the human connection is the most important aspect of
Yeah.
being transparent.
No, you hit it right on the nail. And to really finish off in the couple of minutes we have left, I'd love to touch on some advice that you have for students as well as let you talk, kind of plug your program. But my first question this is, what advice would you give to students who are in the process of selecting a university and not just at yours, right, but any university, and considering an esports program and more. And it comes back to that actual detailed instruction because as you know, a lot of these students, right, they see these directors and they don't see themselves in this position. They go,
Yeah.
hey, I'm just another player and I love games like you, but they don't know that these students see you as a very high up position doing a dream job that they would love to do. And it is very intimidating to approach, right? Some of these directors they just say that they say, hey, if you want to talk, just reach out, right? But I think maybe, it's discussing a little bit more and maybe is it really that simple? But if I'm a player, right, or I'm a student, I'm looking at the next process, what should I do outside of just maybe picking up the phone or sending an emails or anything else I should be doing?
I think from a student aspect. Wait, can you say that question one more time? I just want to make
Yes.
sure that I've got it.
Yeah, so just extra stuff, right? There's that aspect, right? Like you say, directors say all the time, if a student's interested in joining the program, just reach out, right? And I think that can be just saying that can be very intimidating. Okay, just reach out to some guy who's working with students all the time, right? Is there anything that can help them maybe be prepared, right? Like one thing I would say is know who all the players are on the team, right? Know what games they're playing, right? Like do a deep amount of research, right? I know that sounds obvious, but as you know from job interviews, right? That's, people actually
Yeah.
don't do that all the time, right? So just things that you would, if somebody was to reach out to you, what are extra things you'd want them to do?
I think it would just be again. I think like be yourself. Make sure you trust your gut when you're going through these interviews or whatever. Also, if it's an intimidating task to talk to directors like us, bring your parents along. I know it might sound cheesy, but at the end of the day, you're a high school student, still kind of like a young adult child in some eyes. And so don't be afraid to kind of tag your parents along, because I think a lot of the esports, there could be misinformation. And again, at the end of the day, it's just like traditional sports. For esports, there's regulations currently. So I think the biggest aspect is to maybe get a second voice. Like if you're too scared to again, I have parents reach out to me. So if you're too scared to make that initial jump, I'm pretty sure your parents would love to just be like, hey, um, what's it like, yada yada yada, my student is interested in joining your program. Again, if they are not on board, just say there's scholarships available just like our school, and they'll be right on, be like, oh perfect, whatever, to make college cheaper, and they'll hop right onto that. So if you personally can't make the first step, I'm pretty sure your parents are more than willing to make the first step. And again, if they're not, reach out to me. I'll do my best to again reach out saying, hey, I have a student who he's not a good fit for me. If you're a good person, I'll make that initial connection for you.
And I love to hear that. And I know it can sound very simple, probably to a lot of people who are kind of more on the outgoing side, and maybe like me, you're like, if I want to do something, I'm gonna reach out and do
Yeah.
it, right? But as someone who comes from the K-12 space, people will be shocked to understand how nervous these students are, and no, hate to them, right? This is all new and it's very intimidating, and it's a dream to a lot of these kids. And when you're doing your dream, it's a very nerve-wracking experience. So I think just being able to hear that, right? Like bring
Yeah.
your parents, reach out. People, it's simple, but people just need to hear that. Jacob, I really appreciate you taking time. One thing I want to allow you to do for, because what's going to happen, you know how these videos, you only get searched if someone is looking at what are programs you're doing, or you have a future student who's looking at you, they're going to YouTube and this video may come up. One thing I want to give you time to do is really just talk about your program. Just make a plug to your program on a personal level, right? If there's a student, which guarantee there will be in the future, who is watching this, who is doing some research on you and thinking about attending your program, just talk a little bit about, why NC, why you, and what is it that you guys can offer at your program. You can talk a little bit about scholarships or the education part of what your university offers, right? Take that last 2 minutes to just talk about your program.
Yeah, and so I think first off, we function just like a junior college does. We want to get students ready to make that 4-year jump. So we do the same with our program currently. So for Valorant, like I said, it's our niche before. And so if you want to go to a 4-year school, but your rank doesn't require that, currently we function as getting you coming to our school, 2 years of prep work, getting you that rank requirement, experience, etc. So when your 2 years is up here, you transfer to that 4-year school, and you're good to
Mhm.
start on that roster. I think why us? I think we have a pretty good coaching staff. In terms of myself as well, as our assistant coach. So for me personally, I've peaked Immortal 2. I have VLR, I think top like 50 or something. North America, for you Valorant nerds out there, and as well as our assistant coach, he's been Radiant for multiple acts, multiple times, tier 3 player. So I think again, we have a very good coaching staff. For Valorant, we can teach you kind of like the fundamentals, get you ready to transfer to kind of like any school that you would like. Also, something that we do different, I think, again, I don't want to talk about any other schools, but we're always trying to stay on top of everything. So if that's getting services like 1HP gaming, or reaching out like Fit Gamer, like we've done previously, getting that introduced to our program so we're not far behind. We're always trying to figure out ways to kind of become healthier or become more productive in the game, that I don't know if every single school is doing currently. I think lastly, it's just, again, it's a fun experience. I'm a gamer at heart friend. So if you do want to come here, again, reach out. I'll do a talk just like this. Obviously, it won't be recorded or published, but again, I'm more than willing to talk about esports 24/7. Again, I can't say this enough. I'm all about like authenticity. So again, if I'm not the correct program, the right director for you, just reach out to me and we can find that program for you.
Jacob, thank you so much, right? And something I'll leave the viewers with, right? And it's so important when finding a director, right? And he said this at the beginning. He can be a friend, right? For me personally, and as two people who are able to, and I'm sure Jacob would agree with me, as two people who've been able to do amazing and fun things in gaming and esports. I'm sure both of us had a mentor at some point that had very little to do with the education and what tests they were giving you, right? But being a friend, being someone that's there for you, I can 100% attest to that. That I had somebody. If I was looking for a program, what's most important for me is who is a director that I can actually work underneath, right? If my goal is to work in gaming and esports, right, who someone's actually going to work with me and not just see me as, oh, here's just a player, right? So I can guarantee that with Jacob. So if you guys please reach out to Jacob Manchester, he's on all socials, he's on LinkedIn. I appreciate everyone for taking time to listen to the interview as well, right? Something just to plug in. If you guys are looking for help in terms of actually doing that recruitment process and helping being placed, it is a very, as you can see, it is a very daunting process in terms of actually being placed with the university and being connected with the esports program. What we do at Esportian is we actually assist with that entire process. So if you're interested in talking with someone like Jacob, but then also worried about the administration, we take that workload off of both sides and help with that. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Jacob, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and thank you for taking time to meet with
You,
me, Jacob.
and as you can see, I'm a likable guy. I have a student here just hanging on the couch, and so it's a lot bigger than just playing games here.
Oh, what is he? What is he playing? What is
He's
he?
just on his phone, but just again, like I think the biggest aspect is like again, we're more than just gamers. We do things outside the
Yeah.
server, and so it's a great time here. Again, if you're interested in learning more, reach out. More than willing to talk to anyone and everyone.